Thank you. Welcome, everybody. We're three people in an hour and a half talking about really diverse poultry operations is really cramming a lot into one space. So we're just going to give you the top tier skim level. And given that a lot of you already have experience, we weren't really sure as we set up these presentations what we were going to have in the room. So I'm going to skim through a lot of this stuff pretty fast. But my name is Jody Padgham, and I live in central Wisconsin. And I'm just going to give you first a little bit of a profile about my farm. Failure already. The reason that I'm here, I'm actually not doing a lot of poultry. I do very small scale, but that I worked for about 8 to 10 years for the American Pasture Poultry Producers Association, which I do hope you all know about. I have a copy of their newsletter here, an old copy if anybody wants to see it. Great organization. And when I was working with them, I put together this book, Raising Poultry on Pasture. And this is a really nice resource. It was one of the first ones available about pastured poultry. I have a copy up here if you want to look at it. And then I also worked for 16 years for the Midwest Organic and Sustainable Education Service. And I was the financial manager there. And when I was there, I put together this book on fearless farm finances. And so in my presentation today, I'm going to be combining both of those backgrounds to talk about poultry profitability, because that's something that not everybody thinks about as they're getting into a poultry operation. But I am also a farmer. I own a 60-acre farm, as I said, in north central Wisconsin. This is my farm. I bought it in 2001. It's entirely a grass-based farm. Well, I shouldn't say entirely. I have 11 acres of crops. But you can see I have a huge degrading infrastructure. I bought the farm thinking I would farm. I'm on the farm by myself. I've always been on the farm by myself. I've worked with farmers a long time. I knew as soon as I got into it I wasn't going to be farming. I mean, it just isn't going to work out. So I'm more or less a hobby farm, but I do have a lot going on there. My neighbor has a cow-calf operation there on the pasture land, and I have a small sheep flock. It doesn't always look that nice. This is probably what it looks like today, except it's not plowed because I'm not there. About 6 months of the year, it's snowy up there. But the reason I wanted to show you this picture, do we have a pointer? Oh yeah, we do. Yeah, oh well, I'm good at walking. Is that this and this are my poultry production areas. It's basically my front yard, very small scale. But what I want to talk about is how poultry can be added onto a diversity of enterprises, and you can actually make money doing it at a small scale. So I only raise about 100 to 200 Cornish cross broilers per season. I do a pre-order system where I just send letters or emails to 10 to 15 customers. I say, hey guys, I just did this 2 weeks ago. It's time for poultry. I get deposits. They tell me exactly how many chickens they want to raise, and I raise exactly that number of chickens. It only takes 8 to 9 weeks. And I do all organic feed and management, and I butcher on farm. There's some birds out. This is my system. That pen is just made out of cattle panels. It costs about $100 to put it together. I move it every day. I have a modified system where I have, because of predator pressure, I open the door in the day and I close it at night to keep the owls away, and then I have it surrounded by electronet fencing. I can keep about 50 to 60 birds in that pen. So we were thinking that there might be some people in the audience that are just considering poultry or wondering how poultry could go into their operation. And I'm going to just talk about that a little bit, about why pasture poultry is really a great thing to bring onto a farm. It's really easy to set up. It's a very low investment. It really doesn't take much to get it going. Quick turnaround. You know, a lot of times if you think that you're going to be doing beef or apples or whatever, all of a sudden you got this huge infrastructure and it takes a lot of time. Poultry, you can just try it. It either works or it doesn't work. I found that there is a generally strong market demand. Again, you have to explore who's already doing it in your region, but it seems like just about everybody, every area you can find some customers. It's really great to have children's chores. That's one thing that a lot of people like about it. As you're thinking about getting involved, there's sort of a tier level of what scale you can actually get involved with. Most people start off, I would recommend that you start off with just trying it for your family to see if you actually like the birds, and then sell to friends and family. An adjunct enterprise, which I think, Robin, that's probably what you do, and then a significant income maker, which is what Will is going to be talking about. The things to consider as you think about getting into poultry, it is everyday management. It isn't going to be something that everybody wants to consider. You just can't go away for the weekend if you want to be doing poultry. Some people don't like poultry, and this is something that surprises people. They're like, oh, I'm committed, I'm going to be a farmer. But if you don't like birds, I have a neighbor that won't come over and collect eggs because she's scared of the hens. And so it's just not going to be for anybody. And this last bullet, I think, is one of the most important ones that I'm going to leave with you today. If you're going to do it on any scale, you have to develop efficiencies. It's just really important. My system, this is like the true life moment. It is the most inefficient system I hope you ever see, because I am not going to recommend that you take my system and you multiply it. It is a small scale system, and it works for me, and I make money at it, but you would never want to multiply it to try to do what Will is doing or what Robin is doing. But it works well for what I'm doing. If you're thinking about bringing poultry onto your farm, these are the things you need to think about. Who's going to do the work? And when are they going to do it? Are the kids going to do it before they go to school? Are they going to do it when they get home from school? When is the work going to get done? What resources do you have? What land do you have available? Where are you going to store the equipment when you're not using it? And then where are you going to sell the birds? And this could be a 3-day presentation on itself on marketing. I'm not going to touch on it at all, but it's a really important. Don't do the build it and they will come model. That does not work. I can tell you that. Well, what you're going to be doing is eating a lot of really good high quality poultry yourself, which, you know, that's not so bad. Challenges. Everybody likes to eat poultry. I just always laugh because anytime you get 2 poultry producers in a room, I'd say within 5 minutes they start talking about predators. Because your system is going to be designed around what predators you have. Most people are overwhelmingly surprised to hear that rats, weasels, bald eagles, coyotes, dogs, oh my gosh, everybody's going to eat. My modified system, I have this fence for the coons and I have the closable pen for the owls. Those are my 2 major predators. You do have a responsibility for managing live animals, and so that's an ethical responsibility. There's just nothing worse to come out and have a raccoon attack and see half of your flock dead. I mean, it's just financially ruin and emotional ruin. Processing is a huge glitch in pasture poultry. It's something you have to figure out. And I questioned whether I should put this next slide in here, but I'm hoping there's no USDA people in the room. This is my processing system. So this shows you how low end you can be. That's a turkey fryer that I got at Farm and Fleet for $100, and a plucker that my neighbor built for $100. And then there's the crew butchering chickens on butchering day. So there we are, the chickens. I collect them at night and I put them in the back of my old Ford Ranger. In Wisconsin, you're allowed to do on-farm butcher up to 1,000 birds and sell from the farm. Each state is different, and so you have to figure out, go to your Department of Ag to find out what the law is. I do organic. There's a $5,000 on total farm sales where I follow all the organic rules and I can sell my birds as organic. The majority of what I want to focus on is talking about the economics. And this, what I'm going to talk about is relevant to any production operation on your farm. It's not just poultry. This could be apple trees. This could be corn. It could be broccoli. These concepts are all relevant. I'm going to make it relevant to my very small scale poultry operation. And we go into a lot more detail in this book. which, again, if you Google it, you should be able to get it. It's only about 20 bucks, and I really do think that it's worth your investment if you want to learn more about what I'm going to be talking about next. You must figure your cost of production to set your prices. And this is everything beyond that first bullet that you're just giving the chickens away to your family and friends. If you're doing anything where you're selling a product, you have to figure out how much it costs you to raise that. And most people, when they start out, are not charging enough money. Because you think, oh, I'm doing this and it's so fun and I just want people to like what I'm doing. Well, that's fine. But I've gone through the experience of raising my prices from $1.75 a pound to $3.25 a pound in one season, and you do lose some customers when you do stuff like that. You know, they're just kind of like, oh, well, you were really dumb before, and I guess it's good you're smart now, but I don't want to support you. And I mean, it's a hard argument to make. So again, what I would recommend if you're starting out is to just set up a system, a trial system, do some record keeping. I'll show you how to figure out what your costs of production are, and then set some prices once you have some information that you can do that from. This third bullet point, pricing matters the larger you get. If you're selling something for less than it costs you to produce it, the more you sell, the more money you lose. Now just think about that for a minute. It seems a little counterintuitive, and we see this around us all the time in agriculture, right? People are like, oh, bigger, 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 gotta grow, gotta grow. Well, if you're not making any money, you're making a lot less money the more you sell. So be very careful about that assumption. And then as you get more involved in marketing, again, which I'm not going to talk about, hopefully these guys will a little bit, you can identify your product, and that can allow you to get a higher price if you need to get one. Organic, grass-fed, homegrown, that sort of thing. Someone said this to me in a presentation about 20 years ago, and we do want to feed the world. We do want people to be able to buy what we produce. We do want to be able to sell to everyone. But if you need to get a certain price, if you're as efficient as you can find that you can get, and you've got your costs as low as you can possibly get, which is what I want you to do, but if people complain about your prices, then you need to go find people that will support what you're doing and pay what you need to charge. Because again, back to that other bullet point, if you're not charging enough, then why are you doing it? If you're not making a hobby, I mean, it's okay for a hobby, but if you're actually trying to make money, you need to make money, and you need to figure out what that is. So how do we figure out? And I have a handout here, which actually we can pass around now. I'll just pass it around. But this spreadsheet that I'm going to be talking about now for 10 minutes, which is really a 3-hour discussion, but we'll just cover it very briefly. This is the way that you figure out what your costs of production are. I guess it's kind of small in here, but with the handout you'll be able to see it a little bit better. What I did is I went back and I looked at the last 2 years. This is 2016 and 2017. I can't see it up there, but I can see it on my hand. You can see on line 5 that each year I sold about the same number of birds. I had pre-orders for 93 or 92 birds, and then I ordered 115 chicks. The difference between those two numbers is that I have had losses. You can have a rainstorm come in or that coon can jump your fence, and all of a sudden, boom, 15 chickens are gone. And if you've already promised these chickens to somebody, you're in trouble. So I tend to over-order, and you can see on line 4, 1 year I had a little bit higher loss. I don't lose much unless I have a bad year. 1 year I lost 1, and the other year I lost 4. So those are important numbers to consider. The first thing you want to do is keep track of what your variable expenses are. Those are the expenses that are going to significantly differ if you have more or fewer birds. And that's, it's a little bit of a tough concept, because obviously if you order 50 more chicks, and you're only at 100, then you're going to have another pen. So that would be a moderate variable cost. But there are some things like chicks and feeds that even if you only get 10 more birds, it's going to significantly change. So you separate out those costs. And I want to point out line 18 there. A friend and I explored and we found a new feed supplier. And look at that. We got feed for $105 less. It's significantly lower. And it made a big difference in my profitability, as you'll see. The next thing I want to talk about is, so in enterprise analysis, what you're doing is you're looking at all of the expenses that go into producing this particular crop, be it apple trees or blueberries or broccoli or broilers. You look at all the expenses and then you look at the income, or you predict the income, or you decide that you're going to set the income by what kind of price you think you need to charge in order to make enough money to cover those expenses. One important thing you need to cover in the expenses is what that overhead is. So there's the costs of actually raising the birds, where you're actually going out and using things that you're keeping track of, like the feed and those sorts of things. But then there's other things, just the fact that I have a piece of property to set those pens on, and that if you're actually being accurate about assigning all of your appropriate costs, you need to take into account some of that so-called overhead, which is the fact that I have a driveway and I have those little lots that I can put those birds on, but I also have some equipment. Now the equipment, those pens I made, I thought, oh, they're going to last 10 years. Well, I've been doing this now for 16 years, and I still use the same pens. They're a little rickety, and I go out and I fix them up every year. But as I bought equipment, I wrote down how much I spent on it. You can see I'm kind of cheap, and I buy it at auctions and things like that. And then I divide it by 10 years, because you want to say, well, over the 10 years, I'm using up that amount of all of that equipment. And when you make this list for your own farm, then you can update it each year and see, well, did I buy anything new, or did I throw anything away, and take things on and off that. Your tax accountant is doing this when you take in things for depreciation. But this is just a simplified way of keeping track of an amount that you want to assign to those prices of what that overhead would cost. And then down below, that's the taxes and the mortgage interest and the insurance. And I'm just saying I'm just using an acre, so I'm going to take a % of that. My insurance does not charge me extra to have poultry. Some insurance will, and so then you would want to assign more of that insurance number. You can see it's pretty cheap to live in central Wisconsin compared probably to a lot of you. Labor. I have worked with financial stuff for a long time. There's a lot of farmers that are going to tell you, oh, I just take the profit, and that's how I pay myself. Well, let me tell you, when you're setting your prices, that is not what you want to have going on in your head. If you're setting your price, you want to get paid for the time that it took you to raise those birds. And so you want to put a calculation for labor in here. And whether you're paying somebody else, whether it's your daughter, whether it's you, you need to put a calculation for labor, because this is the information you're using to set your price, to figure out your costs. It can be a little tricky the first year to figure out labor, especially if you're on a diversified farm and you're raising broccoli and you want to figure out how much it costs you to do the broccoli. But let me tell you, the record keeping a little notebook and writing down, oh, I went out and it takes me 10 minutes to feed the chickens every morning. Okay, I write that down. Oh, it took me 4 hours to do processing. Okay, I write that down. Write everything down the first year, and then the next few years you can just write down when things change. And so I came up with 50 hours, and I put myself at $15 an hour. Now, when I do when I go out as a contractor and I do, bookkeeping, I charge more than that, but the going rate for on-farm labor is a lot less than that around me right now. And so that's what I put in, and that has stayed steady. But as you look at this sheet, and again, it's easier to see on your handouts, there's a couple places you can see where it's really big money. It's the feed and it's the labor. Those are the major things. So if you do this exercise and you find that it's not working out, that all of a sudden you've got some huge number that you have to charge for your price that you don't think you can actually get in your market, those look for those big ticket items, and those are the things you need to change. Yeah, I could maybe get cheaper bags somewhere, but that's not going to change the overall number very well. So what was I going to talk about here? I got 5 minutes left. So so this is sort of a reverse exercise. The first thing you want to do is figure out your costs of how much it costs. And right now I have, in the year when I had the more expensive feed, it cost me $19.92 to raise the birds, and they were an average of 4.85 pounds when I was selling them. The next year, because I got that cheaper feed, really nothing else changed significantly. They went down to $18.32. So look at how that really does have a significant impact. Once I had that information, I went back and I decided what I wanted to charge. I charge $4.75 a pound. These are not like Walmart birds. And my customers never complain. They don't complain. But by charging $4.75 a bird, you can see I make a little over $2,000. That home use line, which is line 11 there, that's a really important line. And this is something I've been thinking about as I put this together and talking about, because I had between 17 and 22 birds that are home use. Well, let me tell you, somebody that lives alone doesn't need to eat 22 chickens in a year. And the reason I have that is I had no loss. So what I need to do is find an alternate market that I can throw chickens at when I have ones that survive beyond what I think is going to happen. I don't think I want to cut that extra number of birds that I'm raising unless I'm truly confident that I'm not going to get a thunderstorm in August when I'm not home. But that's where I'm actually losing my money, is that I have too many birds that I haven't sold. And so we're just going to keep going here. Yeah, that's that cost. Line 29 is the cost for raising personal birds. But you can see at the bottom two lines that above that $750 that I'm paying myself to raise these chickens, I'm making between $100 and $300 to raise 115 birds, which is between $1 and $2.50 per bird. But that does not include the birds that I'm eating. So if I was selling more, those numbers would be much higher. So, oops. Good, I'm right on time. I just wanted to show you that if we had time, I do integrate other animals with the poultry. Those are the sheep are running through and cutting the grass before the poultry go through. So again, I really recommend that you join the American Pasture Poultry Producers. Great organization. It's a virtual organization. They have a great website and a listserv, very active listserv. There's my contact info, and it's also on your handout. So thank you.